Hey guys, how you going? Welcome to another math lesson by Magic Monk. Today we're going to talk about the factored form of quadratic equations. So if you have seen quadratic equations written in the general form of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, for example, this equation here is written in the general form. For example, x squared plus 8x plus 16. If you factorize this equation into the factored form, for example, let's factorize this equation right now. If you remember how to factorize, I'm just going to show you again in case you've forgotten. So you draw a box, you write the first term in the top left, so you write x squared in the top left, you write the last term in the bottom right, and then you think of two terms that multiply together to give you x squared. So let's say x times x is x squared. And then you think of two terms that multiply together to give you 16. So that's 4 times 4. And then what you do is you fill in these two empty cells by getting the headings and multiplying the headings together. So 4 times x is 4x, 4 times x is 4x, and then you add the diagonals together, so 4x plus 4x, and check that is equal to the term in the middle, so 8x. So when you see that they are equal, that means you can factorize it. And so factorizing it, all you have to do is you write the headings of your box, so this part here and this part here, and you simply put them in brackets, so x plus 4, x plus 4. Now once you have factorized it, this form here is what we call factored form. Factored form. So what is the benefit of going from the normal form to the factored form? Now if you have a look at the equation graphed on Graphmatica. Graphmatica. So let's draw the graph of this equation. Y equals x squared plus 8x plus 16. You will see that the graph has a x-intercept of -4. But in this equation, it doesn't tell us anywhere that the x-intercept is -4. Whereas once we convert the equation into factored form, so for example, I'm going to delete this graph and I'm going to graph y equals x plus 4 in brackets x plus 4. Then the graph is still the same as the graph we drew before, but you can tell from the equation straight away that the line is going to have an x-intercept of -4. So let's try another graph. Let's try y equals, so try another graph. Let's try y equals x plus 3 and x minus 2. So if you draw that graph here, I'll just delete this one. So y equals x plus 3 and x minus 2. You can see that the graph has x-intercepts at 2 and negative 3. So I'm just going to write that down. The graph has x-intercepts at negative 3 and 2. So you can see that the x-intercepts have an opposite sign. So the sign here is opposite to the sign of the number in the bracket. So here we have positive 2 is the x-intercept when it's negative x minus 2 in the bracket. So if I give you an equation, so let's say find the x-intercepts of y equals x minus 4, x plus 5. You can tell me straight away, x-intercepts are at 4, positive 4 and negative 5. Right? And if you don't believe me, you can draw the graph y equals x minus 4, x plus 5. Y equals x minus 4, x plus 5. And you can see that the graph does intercept at 4 and negative 5, which is what I have stated. X-intercepts are at 4 and negative 5. So you might ask, why is that? Well, if you remember, x-intercepts, these 2 points here, have a y-coordinate of 0. So the y-coordinate, x-intercepts have a y-coordinate of 0. So if we make the equation equal to 0, 0 equals x minus 4 and x plus 5, and we solve this equation, if you remember the videos on solving quadratics, if we have 2 terms that multiply together to give you 0, then one of the terms must be equal to 0. So that's the null factor theorem. Null factor theorem, which states that if a times b is equal to 0, if 2 numbers multiply together to give you 0, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. So applying that here, either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x plus 5 is equal to 0. So x equals 4 or x equals negative 5. So these are the x-intercepts, right? Because the y-coordinate is equal to 0. So what is the x-coordinate when y is equal to 0? the x coordinate is 4 or -5, matching the graph that we have drawn here. Okay, so hopefully after watching this tutorial you can understand why we have factored forms of the quadratic equation. Thanks for watching. See you next time.